Welcome to Bold Talk series where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Glenn Bean, founder at Sycamore Equity. Glenn, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you?
Thanks, Epi. It's great to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you for joining me, Glenn, and looking forward to this short format conversation. What caught my eye was that I was on LinkedIn. I saw one of those short interviews with Henry from the Faith Driven Entrepreneur, and I said, okay, well, let me ping you. I really want to have a conversation with you, and so thank you for accepting the invitation. And here we are.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good conversation.
Fantastic. So, Glenn, give us an overview of Sycamore and what motivated you to start the fund.
Yep. Sycamore Equity is a company that provides a platform for nonprofit workers to get into home ownership. And it's particularly faith-driven nonprofit workers. And what we found is, we looked at US housing prices right now, and they have just increased enormously. Even 20 years ago, uh, a typical home buyer could look at a home three, maybe four times what their typical income was. And now it's more five to six times what their typical income is. And so millennials, Gen Zs, just that dream of home ownership is fleeting. And, interest rates make it even harder, and certain parts of the country make it incredibly hard. And at the same time, a lot of people who work at nonprofits and have this desire to serve, they have this incarnational work where they need to be present. They need to be part of a community. They need to be present and feel like their identity and their membership of the community is so important. And so we thought, well, what if we could bring some innovation to housing finance so that these folks who are ready to work and serve and they want to invest 5, 10, 40 years in making a community a better place to be, just want to jump into home ownership. And so we looked at the landscape of what was out there, and there are a couple of tools that are emerging on the horizon. And we thought, if we could use some of the best of what Wall Street has to offer and some of the best of what charitable capital has to offer, we could really help a lot of these people make a difference in their lives and ultimately make a difference in the populations they're looking to serve.
Nice. So, how does that work, Glenn? Like, do they just come to your platform and they sign up for it, or?
That's the easiest way. You can find us on LinkedIn or our website. What it starts as usually is an employer-based benefit. So we'll work with employers, these nonprofits, often faith-driven organizations. So it's churches and denominations, it's Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Young Life, but there are even non-affiliated, non-faith affiliated nonprofits. So we're working with an organization that does after school tutoring for at-risk kids. And they have 21 locations across the entire US. And many of their staff are having housing affordability challenges. And so what we'll do is we'll set up a fund for that particular employer so that they can extend a housing benefit to their employees. And so the historic model in the US is, you have a down payment and you have a mortgage. That's how you buy your house. And then you have a monthly payment to pay down that mortgage and service that debt. But again, right now, houses are so expensive and savings rates are so low that oftentimes folks don't have enough for a down payment or even whatever mortgage they qualify for. It's just not quite enough to get there. And so what we do is we bring affinity capital. So it can be from the employer, it can be from members of the community, or it could be charitable capital that will invest in the house. It's money that comes at purchase to go alongside the down payment, but it doesn't require monthly payments along the way. Rather, when the home buyer either refinances or sells the house, that's when they pay the fund back. So it's this bridge from renting to home ownership. You get to choose your home. We get to dial in your monthly payments so it's appropriate for your income level and your credit score. But it also gives you the opportunity to be living in that community and start to build that equity that is, part of oftentimes a retirement journey and has that housing stability where you know what your monthly payments are going to be and you're not going to have to move from rental to rental to rental over time.
Wow, that's amazing, man. So, Wow, this especially this time. I'm just looking from back in the days where it was easier to buy a house. Um, this type of available program existed, or where would the inspiration? Obviously, we know that we're living in times where the interest rates are too high. People they're not making enough money. Is there any inspiration that came from anywhere?
Well, there are a couple of things. Um, there are some other innovative companies who are offering solutions like this. So there's a growing wave of these home equity agreement opportunities. And so we're not pioneering something literally brand new, but it's still as early innings in its adoption, and it's about getting out there. I'd say the second thing that I'd look at is um, I was an employee at one point and I got, a benefit from one of my employers to do something like this, but it was kind of a one-off thing. It really wasn't a structured program. And then finally, what we found is, churches and folks in the faith-based community, they've been doing this for decades. I mean, some would argue centuries or millennia of having creative ways to get clergy into housing, but particularly, from the 1960s on, there have been these types of equity sharing agreements. And we did a survey of them. Oftentimes they're one-off agreements. Sometimes they're not particularly well done. And sometimes they're actually, not legal. They don't follow the guidelines for lending, or they don't follow the IRS guidelines. And so we thought, well, what if we can set up the system to have a platform of excellence? We'll invest the costs up front, which means then it'll also be lower cost for all these organizations. And we can bring the best of, any of this type of housing finance ideas, but bring it into the 21st century with a little bit of innovation.
Oh, incredible. I come from a world of crowdsourcing, right? And oftentimes when people, when I talk about crowdsourcing, people relate to crowdfunding, right? And I've seen a lot of the models, crowdfunding models for real estate,
Mhm.
uh, being for investment or even being just buying a home itself. Um, how do you see a technology playing a role in solving housing challenges? Obviously, you're utilizing some of the technology here and the networks and so on, but how do you see a technology at large um, playing a role in solving housing challenges?
Yep. Technology is doing so much in this space. And it's true, real estate is a lot about bricks and mortar. It's where people live, but it's absolutely adopting a lot of the innovation that's coming out. And so, first I'd point to business models. There are some examples where people are utilizing real estate in ways that was just never possible before. There was never visibility, there was never trust, there was never the level of contracts. And so all of a sudden you have this really underutilized asset that can be used for so many different things. It's so impressive. Second, I see building materials coming out. And so whether homes are being, built indoors in factories and rapidly assembled, or even, walls made out of concrete that are 3D printed on site. I mean, some of these things completely turn the costs on their side, change the quality. Our construction paradigms, will continue to change and evolve. Where we are, it's more in the financing space. And how do you unlock this value? How can you be a market maker where you have money on one side that wants to do something and a home buyer on the other side, but those things haven't been able to connect before. So that's part of the, technology and innovation we're bringing. And let's just give an example of there's actually a pastor in California who's about to buy a home in just a couple of days. Um, he'll bring, a pretty sizable down payment and take on a mortgage. But there's still about a 40% gap in the house purchase. He's in a fairly expensive part of California. And so there are going to be 29 individuals, sort of to your point on crowdsourcing, who will participate in the financing. Some of them will just donate money and they'll have a charitable contribution and they'll walk away and they're just excited that this person who's making such a difference in their community is able to be part of their community. Some are investing the money and they see it as an alternative to an index fund or, any other investment they could make. It's California real estate. Why not be part of that and have, some returns along the way as well as having that impact? But then finally, we unlock charitable capital, so money that's in donor advised funds or family foundations. And while that money will one day go to charity, sometimes the folks who control it don't exactly know where they want it to go in the meantime. And we bring some of that imagination and say, well, hey, instead of CDs or T-bills or a checking account that's doing nothing, what if you make an investment in this person, this organization, see what they can do? And so, there are those three sources of capital which probably wouldn't have met otherwise, wouldn't have come together for this type of project, and it's going to be something really beautiful.
Um, Now, is there any specific tools that excites you the most besides anything that AI, right?
Well, I'd be lying if I didn't say that isn't important to what we do. You know, Finance can be a deeply personal and sensitive topic in a similar way that, health can be. And it can be unique to your situation. It can also just be overwhelming, also very similar to health. If you have the luxury to go to med school for 7 or 12 years, you could probably understand the problem that you have in your body. But unfortunately, you've chosen a profession that's something other than that. So you have to rely on an expert. And so, we are building tools to say, this is my financial situation. This is where I want to be. This is the opportunity I have. What are all the things I ought to consider? And so then rather than having to go and navigate all that and maybe get a PhD in finance to fully understand it, it just distills it very easily for you and says, here are the things you ought to consider, and here are the paths that you ought to go down. I think in addition to that, it's really the technology platform that connects all the people. It's the accounting simplification. It's the standardization of contracts. It's the connectivity and the trust that comes into the system. Again, to connect that capital that may not have been able to find its home usage, but the person who can utilize it is really creating an enormous amount of value for them and for their community.
Yeah. Now, talking about leadership, we cover the topic of leadership in these short format videos. What core principle have guided your leadership journey, especially tackling the complex challenges like housing affordability?
Yep. Well, I think there are a couple of things here. One is instilling, a mindset of servant leadership. I think that has served us so well. We're serving our customers, we're serving our employees, we're serving our investors. There's a whole ecosystem of people where we want to put their needs before ours. And so, and then I think that would segue into a second thing is, leading by example. And so both trying to embody that servant leadership so that every interaction we have, someone says, wow, I just had an amazing experience with this company. Something happened that was beyond what I could have even asked or imagined. Um, and so then second, it's, no job is too small. And sometimes with these, whether it's making sure the contract is just right at the very end, or maybe there's a very small gift that gets delivered when this, enormous home purchase happens, or just going the extra mile to pick up the phone and understand how someone's day is going. Um, because all of that can be in the background while you're trying to sort out, your entire financial history and making the biggest purchase oftentimes of what's of someone's life, or at least, of this decade. And so between the servant leadership and just a willingness to do any job, nothing is above us. That's the type of culture that we have at Sycamore Equity and what we share with all of our partners.
Yeah. Did you say like pick up a call, pick up a phone and call? Uh,
Phone calls don't.
these days, like the millennials, they're scared of calling someone.
It's a great point, and sometimes you have to call 2 or 3 times. But man, get off videos, get off screens, just hear someone's voice and hear what's actually going on with them. Yeah, absolutely. Phone calls are still indispensable in our sort of interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, we had an intern, and I was like, I was asking, like, I gave him a list. I want you to call these guys, and the guys was sweating. He was sweating. I was like, "What's going on?" It's like, I don't call people. I said, "What do you mean you don't call? Like, call them now." I was like, he was like, he was so scared to death. I was like, "Oh my God!" I realized just stop, not not pushing him too far. Um, so, Glenn. what are some moments that there were like some moments that your decision, your career that shaped your leadership style? Like, what are did you have those moments that you said like, wow, this is a big change?
Mm. You know, there are probably a couple of moments that I could point to. I I think that sometimes I've been inspired by mentors I've had, and I would run through walls for leaders I would want to follow. I've had the opportunity to work for some very big companies, 100,000 plus employees, and then, some very small companies, sort of in startup land with two, five, 10. And I think you also learn by example of what you don't want to be. And so, being true, acting with integrity, and just embodying those values in a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's kind of like going to the gym and physical fitness. It's the repetitions, it's always looking to get better, and it's knowing those things that you hold core to be true, and also, wanting to improve day over day.
Yeah, building that muscle, right? So it's the discipline that really counts. Like, what is this? What is it saying? Is it the discipline is expensive, talent is cheap, right?
I like that one. I'm not sure I've heard that, but I can't agree.
Yeah. Um, Last question, Glenn. What does bold mean to you? The word bold.
Oh, bold. Well, living in Boulder, Colorado, this is something we
I knew
talk
you were gonna bring this
a
up.
lot. Have to say. I think it's jumping into the unknown. It is moving forward to something that is not just common and is not well documented. It's pushing the envelope on our values, on the way we want to see the world. It's how we spend our scarce time and talent. We only have so many precious hours in this world for the people we interact with and the things that we're going to do. And I think it is boldly grabbing that opportunity to say, I have this moment, I have these resources, I have these lives that I can influence. Um, and what are we going to do with them? And it's never settling for just sort of, half effort. And it's, I was going to choose a different word, and it's never settling for, just the common and, maybe something that's gotten us stuck in this problem in the first place. It's always looking for the new opportunities. So I really think it's about pushing the frontier, sort of, tirelessly.
Yeah. Yeah, that level of commitment that, you can't hang out by the window, right? And so you just have to make the commitment go all the way in. And Glenn, thank you. Always be bold. Congrats on the work that you're doing. You're doing really God's work. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for joining me in this Bold Talk series, and look forward to seeing you soon again. Until next time, take care, be great, be bold always. God bless.
Thanks, Happy. Have a
Thank
great day.
you.